Okay, here we go. What you have on what you're looking at now is a letter in Hebrew, which was shared by somebody whose name I will not reveal. You can look it up. You can probably find it if you really, really want to. It's public information. It's on Facebook. It's been viewed many hundreds of times, and it was written by a religious Jewish soldier who fought in Gaza. And the date of the letter is April 14th, 2024. A couple of weeks ago, he was he was a recipient of what's called a Tzav Shemona in Hebrew, an order number 8, command 8, which is basically an emergency draft order for reserve soldiers. He had already fought in Gaza. He was sent back home, and now he got another call-up order. And he sent an order. He sent a letter to his superior officer. He left out the details on top, but he sent a letter which he then shared publicly on Facebook. The response was overwhelmingly positive to the letter. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll read certain parts of it, and I'll give you some summarize the rest of it, because there's a lot of material that I want to share today. Basically, what he's saying is he's not going back. He does not want to go back to Gaza. He's a conscientious objector. We'll see why momentarily, not for the reasons of the leftists that will say, oh, because we're committing genocide, whatever, but for truly valid reasons. He doesn't want to go back. He outlined it very clearly and politely in his letter. And again, the response on Facebook was overwhelmingly positive. This is a Hebrew language letter directed at a Hebrew-speaking audience. So he's speaking to the regular Israeli on the street, and pretty much everybody was cheering him on and saying that he's doing the right thing. Now, I reached out to him. I actually invited him to be a guest on this program. First, he said he doesn't speak English so well. I said I could get a translator. I understand Hebrew. We could work it out. And he politely declined to be interviewed. Most likely because the audience that watches my program is not so parallel to his target audience, which is, again, the Hebrew-speaking public. He's really speaking to people inside of Israel, the native Israelis. That's his target audience. And even though it's public information, out of respect for him, I'm not sharing his name. I'm not going to give any personal details about him because it's not really relevant. It would have been a very interesting conversation to have with him. I had some questions that I asked him also privately, which he did not answer. I said, in lieu of being interviewed, could you at least answer these questions so I could share with my audience? He did not answer them. One of them was, what was the response of the IDF? Have you been punished in any way? Are you willing to be punished? It's questions like that. He didn't answer them, but that's fine. I wish he would have been interviewed, but I understand because I turn down interviews also. Sometimes I'm interviewed to speak on forums where the audience is mostly Gentiles around the world, and even though they can overhear a lot of my messages, they're not necessarily the main target audience of all my messages, and it's not necessarily to the benefit of my goal. Certainly when I'm teaching Torah, not that I'm hiding anything, but sometimes you want to tailor a message for a certain audience, and it's not really my target audience. When I'm giving Musar to the Jewish people, I don't need to speak that to a Gentile audience. It doesn't really serve any purpose. So I understand sort of where he's coming from, but I will share his letter without sharing his name. The title of the letter here is Hanidon. The subject, Milchemes Sholel, a misguided war. And he writes over here that it's very difficult for him. He has mixed feelings in writing this letter, that he just got this call-up notice. And he explains that when he and his fellow soldiers went to start this war in Gaza, at first, they thought their goals were the same as the goals of the people giving them the orders, which is basically to utterly vanquish the enemy, to defeat the enemy, to take vengeance for what had happened on October 7th. But as the months have gone by from the time that they left the Gaza Strip, so he now understands that there's a big difference between the goals of the soldiers, which is actually to win the war, to have a victory, and those of the people who are actually leading the war. And he writes that in place of victory over a very cruel enemy, that we see how Israel is actually assisting the enemy with truckloads of food and supplies to the people who hate us. And in fact, in place of conquering land, and that is being conquered with the blood of our fellows, of our brothers, he and his fellow soldiers are witness to the astonishing sight of the commanding officers, the people who are running the war, returning the population of Gaza to the very land and homes that the Jews conquered with their own blood. And he sees, worst of all, he sees with great pain how the army is choosing the interests of foreign people, specifically singles out the USA, over the interests of the Jewish people. They're endangering the lives of the soldiers to not harm the population of the enemy. And they're even getting rid of officers, mighty officers, warriors, for the sake of foreign interests. I mean, we're talking about there are some good officers, good soldiers, and those people are sort of obstacles to the foreign interests, so the army is getting rid of them. So he says that because of this, he's a conscientious objector to what he writes, again, in bold letters, a misguided war. And he emphasizes emphasizes that he's not doing this out of cowardice, as is proven from the fact that he already fought in Gaza and he's willing to risk his life anytime for the sake of the Jewish people for an actual victory, but not for a misguided war. Okay, that's the essence of his letter. And then he requests at the end that rather than being sent back to Gaza, he would like to join one of the local security forces that guarded the kibbutzim in the south on October 7th. And he writes that should have been the last line of the defense, but of course the IDF was not really around that day, so they wound up being the first line of the defense. So he would rather, in the lieu of going back now to Gaza, he would like to participate in one of these local forces instead, and not to be part of a misguided war. That's the essence of the letter. And I wonder if this is the start of a trend. This is one of the questions that I asked this brave soldier. Is this the start of a trend? Are your comrades in arms talking about this sort of thing, even the ones that are still going, they're still following orders? Are they starting to grumble? Are we risking our lives? Are we getting our legs blown off for nothing? Are we being kept away from our families for weeks and months at a time and risking our lives for nothing, basically, to have a victory that we're then giving right back to the enemy? Like, what are we doing over here? And is this going to start to be a real trend? I hope so. My gut tells me that it is. But on the other hand, again, we have to ask ourselves, what is the red line? At what point do you say, I'm crossing that red line? I don't care if they throw me in jail. I don't care if I'm shamed on Facebook for being a draft dodger or anything like that. I'm willing to do what it takes to do the right thing. I'm willing to suffer the short-term effects, the short-term consequences for the long-term benefits of making a real change. And the real change only happens when we stop just blindly following authority figures and we're willing to suffer in the short term. Definitely food for thought. But again, this got many hundreds of comments on Facebook. It was shared many, many times. And overwhelmingly, it was a positive reaction. It wasn't, how dare you, you're a draft dodger, you're letting other people risk their lives, and you're not risking your life, or the whole army will fall apart if people stop following orders. That was not the reaction. The reaction was, you said it like it is, and we wish everybody would speak out. And so the public is actually on the side of this brave soldier. And I hope that this is the start of a trend where people will start doing the right thing and not just following orders. So next, this is an article from the Slimes of Israel, otherwise known as the Times of Israel, from September 9, 2018. Notice it's called TOI staff. That's usually a signal that it's not actually written by one of their journalists, but it comes from official sources, and then they maybe touch it up a little bit to make it seem like an actual news article, but it's really just government propaganda. So this is from 2018. Army offers amnesty to deserters for festival season. So what's this talking about? I'll read part of it. The IDF has said that it will offer amnesty to any Israeli citizens abroad who left the country without serving, notice that word servitude, servants, if they wish to visit the country for the New Year holiday season. Okay, that they give them the opportunity, if they want to come back to Israel, they won't be arrested and thrown into a military prison for avoiding the army, but they'll have a chance to sort things out, either to join the army or otherwise to wiggle out of joining the army, but not with criminal charges hanging over them. Okay, yeah, the army offered a similar amnesty earlier this year to celebrate Israel's 70th Independence Day. Interesting. And dozens of people took advantage of the deal to sort out their status. Now listen to this. This is the part I really want to get to. Similarly, the army is offering amnesty for those living in Israel who failed to show up for reserve duty, like this soldier that I was just talking about. Anyone who appears before military police before October 31 will have any criminal charges waived and only be disciplined. However, the army said that amnesty does not apply to those who fled from an emergency call-up reserve duty, parentheses, Tzav 8, right? That's what this soldier is facing right now. Those are the ones, no way out of it, no amnesty for you people. And then it explains, I'll read one more paragraph. Army service is compulsory for Israeli citizens, so even those who left the country at a young age and live abroad permanently must return to either serve in the army or receive an exemption. Those who do not are often afraid to return for a visit due to the risk of being arrested by military police. Tell me that we are not slaves, okay? If you leave Israel as a small child and you live abroad permanently, and then you turn 18, you must return to Israel to be given orders by people who are heretics and don't necessarily have your best interests in mind. And frankly, you're not even living in their country and may have no intention of ever living in their country again, but you happen to be a citizen. You're obligated to go back to fight in their wars, follow their orders, or be given an exemption. And if you don't, and you dare set foot in Israel again, you may be arrested and thrown into a military dungeon. This is not the way things are supposed to be. Certainly not according to the Torah. Okay, but this is what soldiers are facing, and it's immense pressure where you have to either be criminalized, flee the country, be a criminal, be afraid to set foot in Israel, or go into Gaza, risk having your legs blown off to conquer something that you're not really going to keep. You're going to give back to the enemy anyway, while you watch Israel sending truckloads of food to your enemies while Jewish people in Israel can't buy groceries. It's very, very interesting what people are willing to tolerate. Okay, so here, this is an article from